Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are connected from. It is a great pleasure to be here connected with you for this Art Creatives workshop. My name is Sandra Correa. I'm Technical Director of All Dance International, and it's a great pleasure to be able to share this experience with each and every one of you. If you're watching us live, well, that's amazing. If not, well, if you're watching us after in YouTube, well, also, I hope this information helps you and is part of your creative process, because that will help you in grow as artists, as creators, and that is one of our main goals and intentions. This initiative is based on 20 workshops that are designed to help and guide, give light on the details of our different categories, our different modalities that will guide you and give you good elements to create and design all of your competitive choreographies. This is an opportunity that All Dance brings to us to help us fulfill the objectives of the organization, helped with each and every one of you, with all also very important different teachers and different judges that are going to be with us in all this process of these 20 workshops. So in order to develop this, in order to be here with you today, there's been a lot of process behind and a lot of different efforts that bring us here today. I want to give a special thank you to Maria Fernanda Castro, our General Director of All Dance International, that makes these different spaces available and possible for each one of us to share our knowledge and, of course, help the industry of dance and of dance schools grow and have all the energy they need and all the different elements they need in able to grow and help dance grow worldwide. So that is one of the main reasons we're here. Now, our Creatives Workshop are based on one special element that is very important for any creative process, and that is knowledge. Because when we think about creative, we think about originality, we think about something different, we think about something new, about a divergent thinking, creative thinking. But there is one principal element that should be always present, and it is knowledge. What we do with this knowledge and what our imagination is able to create, well, that is part of the creative process. So let's say knowledge is the main resource, and the originality and let's say the imagination is the let's say the fuel that will ignite that creative process. So it has to work and come together. We're here to give you that part of the knowledge that can work. Now, all the imagination, well, that is the part that it will be up to you. And one important thing is how we use all these elements, and that is the surprise, because every one of you will use all this information in a different way, but always applying the same rules. And that is an important detail, because that is going to be what is going to make each and every one of the dancers have a fair competition, because that's what we're about. Competitive environment can be positive or negative. That depends on us. And here we strive and we do everything we can possible to make it positive environment for every dancer to have a growing experience and a positive experience out of their each one of their let's say choreographies, presentation, and everything we can take out of that learning process. So that is why we're here, and I know that's why you're also here, because we want to always do better. And well, that's one of the main things we're here for, to help you and guide you and give you all the elements you need in order to have better results every time. Now, for this today, we have two different techniques, modalities, and I have a wonderful guest here with us. She is Paula Duran. She is from Chile, and she is one of our members of All Dance International official staff that is always looking to help the industry of dance grow, our All Dance family as well, and is always willing to share that knowledge and, of course, to help you improve in any way that she can. And well, she's here today to tell us all those details about each one of these two different modalities. What are the special elements that should be present, and what are the elements that are going to be expected by the judges? She doesn't speak English, so I will be translating for her. She will be speaking Spanish, and I will be translating to English. So a little bit of patience there, but the idea is for all of you to have this information, and well, she has the best information and the best advice to give you. So welcome, Paula. Bienvenida, Paula.
Buenos días o buenas tardes en algunos lugares. Gracias nuevamente por la invitación. Espero estar a la altura de todas las dudas. Junto con Sandra vamos a tratar de dejarlos a todos súper claro con todo lo que tiene que ver las danzas latinas y bachata. Así que nada, buenos días. Esperamos que este taller sea espectacular para todos y lo pasemos todos muy bien. Así que muchas gracias por estar y esperamos que salgan de todas las dudas como dije recién. Así que gracias, Sandra, por la invitación y seguimos y continuamos.
Well, she is very happy, as we all are, to be here to share with you. She hopes this is a very productive workshop for all of you. So you learn a lot, especially you clear out doubts you may have in order to have a better process, better results, and of course, enjoy this process. That is one of our main goals, and well, that's one of her main goals as well, that we enjoy what we do. We enjoy dance because that is our passion. So we are going to start with the modality of bachata. So this is a very beautiful dance. It has a lot of impact nowadays worldwide, and she's going to tell us the main elements that we should find in a bachata, what are the different styles of bachata, and what we can use in our choreographies in order for it to be a very well bachata executed choreography. So cuéntanos, Paula, ¿qué nos puedes contar de esta maravillosa modalidad de bachata? Tu micrófono, Paula.
Perdón, ahora sí. Bachata. Es un baile originario de la República Dominicana y por supuesto se caracteriza mucho por los movimientos de la cadera, por sus compases. Este tiene una influencia muy grande entre el son cubano, los ritmos africanos, también ranchera tango, muchos bailes que a la evolución nos va a dar con la bachata dominicana, que viene siendo, digamos, la primera. Luego nacen otras modalidades, otros estilos de la bachata, que viene siendo la bachata moderna, bachata tango, bachata urbana y bachata sensual. Hay muchas fusiones hoy en día alrededor del mundo que se fusionan con la bachata, por lo tanto, tenemos que siempre recordar que su origen es dominicano.
Perfect. Well, what she's saying so far is that, well, bachata is a dance originated in Dominican Republic. It is a dance that one of the main elements and the characteristics we see is the hip movements, and it has a big influence in different types of music and styles like bolero, rancheras, son cubano, Cuban son. And we can find the first style of bachata would be the Dominican bachata. After that, other styles have been incorporated with other influences like modern bachata, urban bachata, and sensual bachata. So these are styles and other fusions that are coming in and are taking place around the world. But it is a style that we still have to remember that the principle and the main part where it started is Dominican Republic. Sigue, Paula.
Bachata. Bueno, vamos a seguir aquí con los tiempos de la bachata. El ritmo, por ejemplo. Todas las canciones, por lo general la música la componemos en 8 tiempos, pero esta se divide en 4 tiempos hacia la derecha o la izquierda, dependiendo si estamos trabajando solos en parejas grupales. Pero siempre vamos a hacer no la pausa, sino que vamos a hacer una detención en el tap en la cuenta 4 y 8, pero en continuidad, sin perder la continuidad del tiempo, y vamos a resaltar los movimientos de las caderas en cada transición, en cada básico y en cada movimiento que estemos ejecutando. La bachata no tiene pausas, como acabo de decir, marcamos y pronunciamos fuertemente el tiempo 4 y 8, y así manejamos la modalidad correctamente. Luego de eso, no tenemos que olvidar que los zapatos de bailes latinos son característicos por su tacón y por su material, que abajo generalmente son de cromo, que nos permiten la flexibilidad del empeine y así poder mostrar una línea de pies mucho más extensa. La propuesta externa es importante, esto de los zapatos, porque si estamos con un calzado que no es adecuado, pues nos va a jugar en contra. La coreografía puede tener 4 elementos máximo como acrobacias para poder incluir en nuestra coreografía eso. No tenemos que irnos más allá, no metamos más cosas que no nos permite el reglamento. Siempre, como lo dije en la reunión anterior, esto es poner más cosas a veces nos resta. Tratemos de ponerlo justo, y el contenido más adecuado a la coreografía es lo que se nos haga más cómodo y más limpio. Seguimos.
Okay, now let me translate so far. Now, one of the elements that's very important in bachata, as in, well, dance in general, is the music. Well, here we have a rhythm that is based on 8 counts. 4 counts will be normally to the right, starting to the left, depending if you're dancing as a soloist in a group or with a couple. We use all the counts. There is no pauses that we use in the count. And the 4th beat is used as and is marked with a tap. And this one important thing is it doesn't lose continuity. So as I was saying, there is no pause in the music. So every count will be used in every beat. The shoes. The shoes are an element that is part of the essence of the dance. It helps the movement, it helps the posture, and well, the idea is to use the correct shoes to interpret this dance. These shoes, what are the characteristics of the shoes? They're high heels, normally with a flexible sole that will let the feet move and allow an extension and allow for it to be comfortable for the dancers to do all the work and the footwork. In this dance, it is sometimes used to do some maybe acrobatic elements with the couple or by yourself. Here we have, let's say, a restriction. You can do maximum 4 of these acrobatic or gymnastic elements if you wish to do so. It's not something that you must do, but something that you are allowed to do if you wish to do that, but maximum 4. So we don't lose the essence of the dance, of the basic counts, of the basic moves. That's something that's very important to have and to keep in mind. And remember always what time is emphasized. It's always emphasized with the hips in different manners, but it's always continuous, and we always keep the counts and keep the basics in mind. Muy bien, gracias, Paula. ¿De esto hay algo más que desees agregar?
Sí. Tenemos que recordarles siempre a los bailarines que tenemos diferentes estilos de bachata, y cada vez que estemos en nuestra coreografía tenemos que pronunciar y dejar ver qué es lo que estamos haciendo, o sea, qué estilo de bachata estamos utilizando. Yo recomiendo siempre utilizar bachata fusión a la hora de hacer la coreografía, porque es más amplia y mostramos mucho más sin recaer en una sola. Pero eso también va a depender de lo que queramos nosotros como gustos personales. Cada uno puede elegir el gusto que quiera, elegir lo más sensual en bachata sensual, sin caer en la sexualidad del baile, ya que sensual no es lo mismo, es un contexto, es un método, y tenemos que trabajar bastante en eso. Y si queremos trabajar un full bachata dominicano, tenemos que hacer una lección musical muy dominicana para que nuestra consistencia en el baile sea plena y acorde a la música. Entonces, cuando tenemos un poquito de cada uno, es mejor utilizar la fusión. Así en la fusión nos podemos explayar mucho más en la coreografía y dejar más en visto que estamos bailando una bachata más general. Eso.
Perfecto, gracias. Now, other elements that you should keep in mind when you are dancing a bachata choreography or performance is, remember, we have different styles of bachata. And we should have this in mind because it should be very clear what style of bachata we choose to represent in our performance. If we do a bachata fusión, a fusion, that is, we can use different elements of different bachatas. This will give us a liberty and give us various elements we can use to be able to show different elements the dancer has on stage. It will give us a wider range of musical election, and it gives us some elements that it will allow it to be a little more, let's say, a broader view. When we choose a specific style, it should be clear what style we choose to represent, and the music should be according to the style. So that is going to be an important detail, especially when we choose a specific style in bachata. Now, one of the elements that is let's say, characteristic and is known bachata worldwide is for its sensuality. Now, it is important that we keep in mind that one thing is sensuality and another thing is sexuality. So we should keep it in that sensual manner and not take it a little overboard to the sexual manner, because especially here in All Dance, we have a public that is family oriented. So here it is very important that we keep that, and that is the essence actually of bachata. But commercially, it has been had a strong sexual influence, and that may be good for other, let's say, stages. But here in this competitive environment, we look for family oriented performances. So try to keep that in mind and keep it in that sensual manner. And of course, the age of the dancers in which we use this will also be important and reflected in your choreographies. Perfecto. De eso sería entonces de bachata, ¿cierto, Paula? Okay.
Exactamente.
Perfect. Those are the basic elements to keep in mind when we are creating a performance in bachata or when we are presenting this performance in bachata. Obviously, when we use these elements to create the choreography, well, it will have a better result, of course. But if not, well, we can adjust or we can implement what styles we are in your performance if you already have a performance that may be already built. If you have any questions, you can use our chat to communicate with us. We would love to answer any questions you have. If not, if you're watching us later on YouTube, leave the comments. Always like and subscribe if you want to be always on with the information we have, because we are coming with a lot of information for you. Now, moving on to our next modality. Also in the Latin environment, we have Latin All Dance. This is an open Latin modality where we can see an influence of different Latin styles and different Latin techniques. Paula is going to share with us what are the basic elements that we should find in these performances. What are the elements that make a Latin open choreography Latin open, and all the things that we need to keep in mind for our performances. Así que te doy la palabra, Paula, cuéntanos acerca de Latin Open All Dance.
Bueno, Latin Open en All Dance nos permite muchas cosas, porque ahí nos saltamos un poquito de algunas categorías como, por ejemplo, salsa o solo bachata. Aquí podemos fusionar, está bien si queremos funcionar los bailes latinos, siempre y cuando los bailes latinos que vamos a trabajar nos estén en otra modalidad, o sea, en otra casilla. Ya sabemos que Latin Open anteriormente tenía todos los bailes latinos incluidos en una sola categoría, que era esta. Ahora se han separado, bachata, salsa tienen su cabida y también ballroom. Entonces, a la hora de hacer Latin Open tenemos que tener conocimiento de eso. Aquí podemos fusionar diferentes tipos de bailes, como por ejemplo el merengue, bolero, cha-cha-cha, samba, siempre y cuando la samba sea brasileña y no de ballroom, porque ya dijimos que ballroom tiene otra caseta. Entonces tenemos samba, lambada, entre otros bailes. Podemos usar bailes latinos como por ejemplo música de Chayanne, música de Shakira, música de Jennifer López, donde podemos trabajar todo lo que es el movimiento de cadera, que es algo característico de las danzas latinas. Pero también, como dije, podemos hacer salsa y bachata siempre y cuando las podamos fusionar. Aquí podemos hacer un mínimo de dos fusiones musicales siempre y cuando estas estén en otra caseta, porque si no, podemos hacer solo uno si queremos. Por ejemplo, merengue. Merengue no está en otra modalidad, entonces la podemos tener, la podemos hacer sola, o sea, podemos hacer solo una canción, solo un baile, en este caso, por ejemplo, merengue o samba, que no están en otra caseta como modalidad apartada, como también la lambada, o si queremos, las podemos fusionar entre sí y todo eso está bien, siempre y cuando la música sea latina y sea característica de esta modalidad y pueda ser ejecutada también en baile de la misma manera.
Perfecto, gracias. Okay, so in Latin Open is a modality that will give us a wide range of elements we can use and give us a lot of liberty in order to create our performances. Now, this allows us to use different elements. These elements can be a mixture of different Latin techniques that don't have their own different modality. For example, we talked about bachata earlier. So bachata has its own modality where it dances by themselves. Now, what happens if we want to mix bachata with another style? Well, if we want to mix it with another style of Latin dances, then of course it should come here in Latin Open. If we dance salsa, we have a specific modality and technique for salsa. So what salsas come in here? The salsas that are mixed with other Latin styles. If we do a salsa and a bachata, if we do salsa and merengue. So those are the elements we're going to find here. We have ballroom all by itself also. So the dances that can be danced here alone by themselves without being a fusion or a mixture would be the Latin dances that don't have their own category, technique, or modality. For example, merengue. You can dance a whole song of merengue, or you can mix a part of the song in one song merengue, the other part salsa, the other part cha-cha-cha, right? Or the other part we can dance lambada or dance samba. Remember, this is samba brasilera, Brazilian samba, because we also have let's say ballroom samba, and that would go in ballroom dances. So here we're talking about samba, but the Brazilian samba that is part of the Latin dances. So this Latin Open allows us to play with different styles, allows us to explore different styles or just one style, and should be always accompanied with Latin music. And of course, not just the Latin music, but this Latin music interpreted with Latin technique in the steps and in the choreography in order for it to be a Latin Open, because we can use Latin music to do other types of performances, but here it's Latin music with Latin dance techniques. Muy bien, Paula. Sigamos. Listo, Paula. ¿Algo más que nos quieras complementar acá?
No, nada.
Okay, so that would be basically it. As we see, the shoes, the same applies for Latin Open as it does for bachata, because these dances use the same technique in the shoes. Also, it is allowed for acrobatic elements if you wish to include them in your performance. And those would be like the basic elements that you can use in Latin Open. As you see, it's a wide range of elements you can include, and it allows us to explore and see all the different elements that these overall dancers have to bring to their performance to make it unique and make it their own. Now, these are the two modalities we are going to be speaking about today. And about this, there's another important element. For it to be fair play, and for all dance, this is a very important feature, for every dancer to have a fair opportunity and a positive experience on stage, and for it to be a positive competitive environment. Well, we have designed different levels in which these dancers can and may and should compete according to their technical level. We are not, these levels, we have, let's say, 4 basic levels: new all dancers, student level, pre-professional level, and professional level dancers. These levels are not based on how long a dancer has been dancing, how long his training has been, or how many times he's been on stage, how many times he or she has been competing, because we do not have a way to, let's say, corroborate this information, and it would be very, very extensive and difficult for that to be, let's say, proven. So what is important when we go on stage for it to be fair? Not how long he's been training, because I can train 1 year and only go take 1 class a week, and I can train 1 year, let's say 5 times a week, 4 hours each day. So that will give me an advantage, and we can maybe have the same year of training, but not actually the same experience. So here, what will we consider new all dancers? These are dancers that are just beginning in dance in general, and the knowledge of their body, their spatial awareness, their coordination, in general, all the elements of body dominium, the consciousness of their body, and the musicality. They're just training their ear and their body in this training. So here, what will we see? Simple elements in their choreography that can be, of course, well executed, but in a simple technical, let's say, development. So we won't see double turns, because normally at the beginning, if they even learn to turn, because it's a process, you need to have postures, a certain dominium of the strength of the ankles to dominate the shoes, because the heels are not always something an easy element to domain. Now, jumps, simple jumps that don't include, let's say, legs in 180 degrees, because flexibility is also something we have to work on. If you do include gymnastic or acrobatic elements, they should be with still 2 hands, or the complete body on the floor, like rolls, front and back, but simple elements that show that the dancer is just starting to learn and to develop these elements for their all their dancing abilities. So if you're a new all dancer in one modality, you're in all modalities. If in some modalities you are a student, well, in all you will be considered a student, because you already have certain domains of your body that will make it easier when you start another style of dance. So here in student levels, we'll see, of course, there's still students. We all are, because we're always learning new things. But here in the student level, we will consider dancers of all ages from 6 and over, because in new all dancers, we have dancers from 4 years old up to 14 years old. And here in students, we have from 6 and over. And at the student level, we do not have technical restrictions. They can or cannot turn if you wish to. If you turn and you wish to do doubles, if you wish to do more difficult turns, there is not a problem, because we're all in the same conditions. They're all student dancers. They're all working on more difficult technical elements. And of course, well, the idea is to do them correctly, but they're still working on that, and that will be obviously expected of the dancers by the judges. We also have an open level for certain combinations. For example, in a choreography, you have 2 different levels of performers. Some of the dancers are new all dancers, and some of the dancers are student level dancers. But in a performance, we have them together. So here, in order for it to be fair and everybody to have the same conditions, well, we have a student open division where these dancers can come and dance together with no problem at all. So here, well, both levels will be combined. How you combine them in your performance, your choreography, well, it's up to you, your imagination, and your creativity. We also have our pre-professional level. Pre-professional dancers, well, are dancers that are from 15 years and older, but have to have certain experience, of course, to be considered pre-professional. If you're a dance teacher, if you're a choreographer, if you're a student, a teacher, if you're help in your classes, if you're a principal dancer, if you're part of a professional or a dance company. Now, this will make you or pre-professional or professional. How do I know where I should dance? If you're underage and you're a teacher, well, you will be considered a pre-professional dancer, because for professional dancers, one of the elements that should be present is you should be over 18 years old. If you're over 18 years old and you're a teacher, you're professional. If you're under 18 years old and you're a teacher, you're pre-professional. So this are some of the elements. Of course, in pre-professional dancers, you can also be a very advanced student, maybe not a teacher yet, but you want to go up against the best. So you want to start in pre-professional level. That is okay. You can do so as well. But if you are a teacher, you must be in one of these two levels. So it will be fair because you have a different knowledge of your body, a different knowledge of dance, and you're already starting to share that knowledge. That means you are going to be considered as a pre-professional or professional dancer, depending on the age and the case. This is to make it fair for everybody, and for everybody also to have to earn these awards. Because when we win something, but we do not win it honestly, whatever we gain in life loses its value. And that's very important to keep in mind. And for us, a fair play in the competition is a very important element. So these are designed for that, for it to be just for everybody and equal conditions. Now, we have other two open divisions. We have open pro, because in some performances, you may want to include your pre-professional dancers and your professional dancers together. So when they dance together, they should be in the open pro division. So here the level of open pro will have professional and pre-professional dancers in the same choreography. And we have our last level that is open. This is open all ages, all levels, in large groups in open productions. These are for those large productions where we sometimes include new all dancers and pre-professionals, or student and professionals, or any of the mixtures that are not or open student or open pro, but we mix different levels, and it is okay, but we should be registered in open level division for everybody. So those are the elements and the levels we have. Now, let's see, and Paula is going to tell us some of the elements that the judges will be expecting specifically for these modalities and this technique in the different levels of the dancers according to the experience and according to the level that will be dancing. Así que, Paula, cuéntanos un poquito acerca de las expectativas que se tienen en esta modalidad de acuerdo al nivel de los bailarines cuando van a interpretar.
Ahora sí, es importante que cada uno de los bailarines esté en el nivel que corresponde, por eso es importante recordarle a los maestros, a ustedes mismos bailarines, a nuestros coreógrafos, que debemos estudiar muy bien el nivel donde nos vamos a situar en la competencia para así tener un resultado acorde al nivel que estamos trabajando en nuestra coreografía y en el campeonato en sí. Entonces eso es de suma importancia, que puedan estudiar bien dónde estamos, si somos new dancers, si estamos en un preprofesional, si somos realmente estudiantes, si podemos estar en una categoría profesional. Eso va a depender de que estudiemos bien el nivel en el que estamos trabajando y que además estemos acorde al reglamento, que es lo que nos pide para estar en cada uno de esos niveles. Y bueno, en lo que respecta de danzas latinas o bachata, vamos a estar obviamente esperando que cada uno tenga una destreza de acuerdo a este nivel. Siempre los niveles profesionales o preprofesionales son mucho más exigentes a diferencia de un estudiante o un open estudiante y un new dancer que está recién incursionando en el baile. Por eso es importante saber en qué nivel estamos. Bueno, a los pequeñitos o a los nuevos new dancers les vamos a estar pidiendo más que nada enfatizar un poco o 100% en lo que es los básicos de las danzas latinas, el movimiento de las caderas, las transiciones correctas, poder mostrar el movimiento de cadera correspondiente de lo que estamos bailando. Todas las danzas latinas en general, tanto salsa, bachata y todo lo que son danzas latinas, se caracteriza por esos movimientos de cadera. Entonces, algo que no podemos perder desde el nivel más bajo hasta el nivel profesional. Los movimientos de cadera son importantes para que la transición de esto no lo olviden. Claramente, a un nivel estudiante vamos a pedir que tengan mucho cuidado en lo que va a ejecutar, en los elementos difíciles que va a utilizar en su coreografía, que estos sean limpios y que por sobre todo sean cuidadosos en en no accidentarse en alguno de esos elementos. Por eso tenemos que saber trabajarlos bien. Como lo dije anteriormente en la otra reunión, es importante saber que a veces más nos resta y a veces menos nos suma muchísimo más. A la hora de vernos cómodos en nuestra coreografía, obviamente nos vamos a sentir más plenos. Y a los preprofesionales o profesionales claramente les vamos a exigir mucho más fundamentos de la modalidad, le vamos a exigir por supuesto que todos los elementos utilizados, la destreza que ejecute en su coreografía, ya sea como solista, dúo, trío, grupal, sea más extensa, sea más plena, musicalización extrema, porque se supone que ya en esa categoría profesional tenemos un oído desarrollado 100% para lo que estamos ejecutando. Entonces, al menos yo como jueza, es una de las cosas que más pido en estas modalidades, es la musicalización, la actitud, cómo te proyectas en el escenario desde la entrada hasta la salida, cómo te vas a situar y cómo vas a desenvolverte en tu coreografía. Eso es generalmente lo da el inicio. Entonces, de ahí en adelante, debemos estar súper expuestos al movimiento de cadera, donde los básicos fundamentos no pueden ser olvidados. A todos les exigimos lo mismo, pero claramente cada nivel tiene un nivel de exigencia más alto.
Muchas gracias, Paula. Now, according to the levels, is also going to be what is expected of the dancers, of course, in their performances. For example, for new all dancers, what is expected and what is looked for is that they have clarity on the style they are dancing. So we want to see the basic steps of each one of the styles that they are dancing, if it's bachata or if it's Latin and they're doing several, if merengue, what is the basic step? So that should be one of the first elements present. And starting to begin and understand the hip movements and the coordination. So these are the elements that will be obviously looked for in a new all dancer and will not be expected to do very difficult elements because it is understood that it's just a beginner dancer. So the basic elements should be there, the basic steps, the clarity of the style, and the, let's say, the use of the hips in this style. That's very important. For student levels, well, of course, the coordination, the basic steps should already be there. And to move on to the next dominion and level, well, the transitions will also be one of the elements that are going to be taken in account and come into place. So how are the transitions executed in, how is the understanding of these transitions in the choreography and the performance? Always looking for every movement to be very clean and to be understood. Sometimes when we put too many difficult elements or difficult elements that go above the technical level that these dancers can execute, sometimes instead of adding to the performance, it can take away, because obviously the idea is what we're performing, we're still at a student level and we're still working to perfect them, but it should have an overall clean execution, especially to keep our body healthy and not to have any accidents. So this is some elements that will be expected and will, of course, look for in this level. In the pre-professional and professional level, well, it will have a very more tight, let's say, expectations and high expectations, because these are dancers that already have the minimum of the basic steps, should have clear transitions, and will be expected also to have, let's say, a more difficult level in the choreography and the performance, how they use the music and use the musicality and use that to interpret different things in the performance from the beginning until the end. How do they present themselves on stage? How is their security? How precise are their movements and the expression? All these elements will be, of course, expected in a pre-professional and professional level. So always looking to be as clean as possible. It's a competitive environment, so of course, this will be one of the elements that will mark a difference. And our different open levels, well, that is according to each dancer, but the expectations of student open will be of this level, and open pro will, of course, we are aware that everybody there is a pre-professional and professional dancer. In open, well, it has to be very creative how you work with maybe new all dancers and professional dancers to make it work in their advantage, and not maybe have new all dancers do the same choreography exactly as professionals. That will be maybe not healthy for the dancers, especially the new beginning dancers. So work on that depending on your dancers, but the expectations will be, of course, going every time up. The more advanced that the level is, well, the expectations will also go higher. Okay, now we have already defined, let's see, what level our dancer is. We already know the elements they should have in their performance. Now let's see the elements that will be part of the scoring process. So all the judges that are going to be evaluating and grading these performances also have different elements that they have to look at. We have also our own rules that we have to guide ourselves from. It's not just a personal opinion. So we have, for this process and this job, 3 different judges. Our maximum score possible are 100 points. 70 of those 100 points can be given by our modality judge. This judge also gives a feedback to the dancers after each performance. We also have a complimentary judge who gives 30 points maximum of these 100 points. And in total of them would be 100 in the maximum score possible. Now, the deductions judge will be the judge that is there to supervise and make every one of these rules that they are applied, and for it to be a fair competition for the dancers, and have some different elements that will be according and regarding the modality. And we're going to go over and see what are those criteria that the judges will be looking for and that will have an effect on my score. Now, we have different, let's say, ranges and ranks in our, let's say, scores. Now, there's an average score that would be the, let's say, the minimum that is expected, the normal, let's say, the average, as the name says, of what is expected in each criteria, because each criteria will be expected differently. We can always go above that average. We can always exceed that average, and we can always surprise with different elements. And sometimes we may go below average and still have to work on some of the criteria. Now, the idea, and that's why it's by criteria, because, well, we sometimes exceed in some things, sometimes we don't, or maybe we're just and more keeping the average scores. So this is going to be one of the elements that will, of course, be there. Now, what are the specific different elements and, let's say, concepts that are going to be present and looking for the judges? Now, let's go over our first judge. Remember, the modality judge can give a maximum of 70 points. And the right hand of each one of the concept and the criteria will see a maximum of points that can be given by this criteria. So each one of them has, as you see, different amounts, and, well, that will be kept in mind. Now, the specific technique will be correct modality and technical level. The correct modality will be look for all these elements that Paula shared with us previously. What are the specific elements that should be in a bachata? What are the specific elements that should be in Latin and open? So that will be here evaluated and graded if they are all present or if some are still lacking. Technical level, the execution, of course, with the expectations according to the level and the age range of the dancers. So how is that technical level and clarity in the technique, and of course the technique applied to that modality? Okay, the execution is going to be very important, and in this we're going to keep 2 things in mind: the synchronization, especially and applied to dancers choreographies with 2 or more performers on stage. And when it's just one dancer, well, the synchronization will not be taken into account, but the skill. And for everybody, of course, the skill. So what is the skill? How is my execution according to my technique and the interpretation we give? How clean is it? How do I use that technical level in my performance, and how do I apply it to the movements and to all of the technique I'm bringing into the performance? And we're also going to have our difficulty. In the difficulty, we're going to keep 2 different criteria. We're going to have extraordinary movements and elements of risk, 5 points each. Now, when we hear that and we read it, most people straight ahead imagine what they have to do is a lot of acrobatic elements, a lot of very, let's say, different movements. They have to stand on their head, I don't know, do a lot of various different acrobatic elements. But here we are talking about extraordinary movements and elements of risk that are inside these techniques. If we do acrobatic elements, it will be, of course, included in an extraordinary movement and element of risk. But here we're talking about the elements that are part of the technique. So in bachata, what are the elements that will be considered an extraordinary movement and elements of risk? The speed, the dominion of the body, let's say the different turns, the velocity, the agility of the feet and of the arms, all those elements that are specific to these dances and to Latin dances, and that, of course, have a different difficulty in the performance and in the technique as well. So these are the first elements. We're going to see and ask Paula if she has something she would like to add or give us little details specifically for these two modalities. So Paula, cuéntanos acerca de esto, cositas que quisieras agregar o los elementos, digamos, como de dificultad propios de estas modalidades y qué elementos deben tener en cuenta fuera de la modalidad que ahorita ya estuvimos hablando de esos elementos presentes.
Exacto. A ver, para que estemos en la técnica específica, por ejemplo, si estuviésemos en bachata, como dije anteriormente, debemos pronunciar bien con nuestro cuerpo los básicos. No así que en Open Latin también es lo mismo, porque estamos bailando tantas latinas también. Entonces debemos ser súper correctos a la hora de hacer nuestra coreografía, saber cuáles son técnicamente los básicos que vamos a utilizar para que se visualice bien la modalidad que estamos trabajando. Musicalmente también nos tenemos que preparar para que tanto la ejecución de nuestros básicos vayan acorde a la música y obviamente al nivel técnico que esta nos va a hacer ejecutar en el momento de hacer nuestra coreografía. Tenemos que preocuparnos justamente de la técnica. Cuando hablamos de un estudiante, no estamos esperando técnica a nivel alto como un profesional, pero sí estamos esperando que el manejo del básico sí sea bien, independiente que sea un alumno estudiante, porque estamos hablando de la base, no de la dificultad de la coreografía, sino que de la modalidad correcta y su ejecución. La sincronización, como decía Sandra, no la podemos tomar en cuenta que no estamos hablando de un solista, pero sí cuando hablamos de un dúo, trío o grupo. La parte de la sincronización es súper importante porque así también nosotros vemos el trabajo que hay detrás, el trabajo y el ensayo que hay como grupo, como dúo, como trío. Entonces eso es súper importante, pero los solistas también tienen una parte que es súper importante, que es la musicalización. Cómo vamos a hacer la destreza de nuestro baile musicalmente hablando, cómo lo vamos a proyectar con nuestro cuerpo, cómo vamos a incluir elementos difíciles que hagan que nuestra coreografía sea más explosiva, porque como estamos solos, debemos utilizar un espacio, llenar un espacio grande, pero somos uno solo. Entonces debemos tener transiciones, ocupar lo que más podamos el espacio, no perder la transición, la ejecución del básico en las transiciones y en la dificultad de lo mismo. Por ejemplo, podemos no tener elementos extraordinarios, digamos que porque estamos en nivel estudiante, pero sí tenemos un oído musical bastante desarrollado y podemos jugar con la música sin darnos una voltereta. Podemos jugar con la música y con nuestra actitud. La proyección nuestra tiene que ser fuerte. Desde el momento que me pongo en el escenario hasta el momento que termino mi coreografía, mi actitud tiene que ser la misma. No perder el papel de mi coreografía, lo que estoy tratando de proyectar, que los movimientos sean claros, que sean fuertes, que tengan peso, o sea, que tengan actitud y tengan mucha fuerza. Eso es fundamental a la hora de nosotros poner el puntaje en la modalidad, porque todo lo que es la música y los básicos, los fundamentos de la modalidad son importantes y nos hacen el puntaje. Y la ejecución y la dificultad va ligado a lo mismo, a la música y a todo lo que nosotros podamos proyectar con nuestro cuerpo. Ya saben que los movimientos extraordinarios tienen un límite de cantidades que tenemos que también respetar y limpiar para que puedan ser bien ejecutados.
Muchas gracias, Paula. So specifically for these modalities, let's say, to keep in mind, especially for the modality, all the elements she shared earlier, that the steps, the basic steps of this, whatever you choose, bachata or Latin, should be present and should be clear. And of course, the music should be according to the style that's going to support these steps and the choreography. So that will always try to keep in mind what you're using, what technique, and all the elements that are going to be supporting this should be equally present and equally clear. So we have a correct modality completely clear. In the synchronization, well, of course, in two or more, the synchronization is going to be very important. How the teamwork goes together, and the skill is going to be important for everybody. If it's duet, if it's a soloist. In soloist, it's going to be, let's say, a big influence because they have to work not only using the whole stage by themselves and filming, but also that projection, the synchronization with the music, how we use the music, and all the ability we have with our body and how we show that ability through the choreography. And in difficulty, the extraordinary movements and the elements of risk. Well, one of the elements that is going to be there, keep in mind if you're doing acrobatic elements, how many you can use. And in the difficulty, one of the elements that is going to be considered is how you, for example, use the music is one of the elements that can be considered a difficult element in this process. As I was saying, the footwork, the speed, and in not only the speed, but the clarity in the speed, because if we do it fast, but it is not understood well, it's not going to be correctly executed and be able to understand what it is you're trying to do. And the attitude is very important in general for these dancers. The attitude from the beginning to the end, to not lose the context you're trying to say and to not lose that expression and not lose what it is you're trying to, let's say, communicate to the audience. And that is through the attitude, through the steps, through the clarity, and through every one of these elements that we keep in mind. Now, the other elements and the other, let's say, criteria that are going to be present and that they're going to be looking for is, for example, musicality. In musicality, we have two different, let's say, criteria independently. That one is the musical interpretation or beat. For example, when the new all dancers, normally they are just using the beat, but the clarity and the difficulty of the musical interpretation is going to be a little limited to that basic element. But when we start growing and we start going more difficult, well, the musical interpretation is going to vary a lot. And in this style and these styles of dance, that interpretation is one of them, is a very important element in how you express the dance. The music is going to be, if we do an edit of different musics, how is the clarity of that edition of music and the quality of the music. But also, and a very important element here is what music we're using. If we're doing a bachata and we're using salsa music, well, it's not the correct music for that dance. So there, it wouldn't be the correct music. In Latin dances, we have a little more, let's say, a wider range of music we can choose. But of course, it should be Latin music so we can do the Latin techniques. In choreography, what are we looking for? The costume and the complexity. Here, the costume, that the costume is appropriate for the age, for the dance, that is comfortable. The shoes should be according to the style. All the elements of the attire should be according to the dancer, the style, and the specific modality that you are dancing. The complexity of the choreography here not is based on the specific elements that the dancers are doing, like say turns, jumps, but the complexity of the composition of the choreography, the use of the space, how we're moving from one place to the other, how these elements connect, if they're doing complex elements like cannons, like all the structure of the choreography, the complexity of this composition. And in creativity, that's a super important element, and that's why we're here. This is a creative workshop, is how we use all these elements and all this information to make our choreography unique, to make it dynamic, to make it explosive, especially when we're talking about a soloist. How are we going to work with that to make our choreography be the criteria that's entertainment? How am I going to make this choreography to keep the audience on their toes, to keep the audience wanting to see more? That will be part of how enjoyable that is, not only by the dancer, but very importantly by the dancer, because when we enjoy what we do, that is what we are communicating. So to be able to generate that contact, that energy, and share and transmit what it is we're trying to say through dance and through the movement, well, that is going to make a choreography entertaining. And of course, creativity is an important part of this concept, so they work together in this. Let's see if Paula has something she would like to complement. ¿Hay algo aquí que quisieras complementar que sea, digamos, como detalles o tips que les puedas dar específicamente para esta modalidad de bachata o danzas latinas?
Claro que sí. Es importante a la hora de hacer nuestra coreografía, tomar en cuenta estos puntos que son a veces mucho más importantes que cualquier elemento de riesgo que podamos incluir, como por ejemplo la musicalización. La musicalidad de nuestra coreografía es súper importante. También cómo vamos a crear esa coreografía y cómo vamos a mantener al público entretenido con el papel de nuestra coreografía, sin perder la interpretación de lo que estamos haciendo, sin perder la fuerza, sin perder absolutamente todos los elementos que hacen que nuestra coreografía sea entretenida, que es el punto que está más abajo. Y así hacemos una creación mucho más compleja y unimos todos los puntos. Y a eso le agregamos el tema del vestuario. El vestuario tiene que ser acorde a la modalidad. El vestuario idóneo en danza latina es el que tú quieras. Puedes utilizar un body, puedes utilizar vuelos, puedes usar flecos, puedes usar brillos, puedes usar lo que tú quieras siempre y cuando el vestuario sea acorde a la modalidad y te haga sentir cómodo en tu coreografía, porque a veces nosotros nos sentimos cómodos con un vestuario, pero a la hora de hacer nuestra coreografía ya el vestuario no se nos hizo tan cómodo y nos dificulta a la hora de estar haciéndola, y eso nos va a distraer en el escenario y muchas veces la ejecución no va a salir plena. Entonces ahí tenemos que tener cuidado y obviamente ensayar con nuestro vestuario mucho antes de la presentación del campeonato, para así estar bien y cómodo con nuestro vestuario. Entonces, juntando esos puntos que son importantes, deberíamos tener una creación altamente entretenida para nuestro público, para nuestros jueces y para nosotros mismos.
Muchas gracias, Paula. So what Paula was saying to us is that all these elements are very important since the beginning. Since we are creating our choreography, we should take into account these points, because also they work together. And that's a very good point of view, because one thing and one element leads to the other. So actually they work and they grind in together like clockwork. So important when we take them into account that the music is going to be very important. The music we choose and the musicality on how we create this during the whole performance. That will also give us more complexity. And when we have more complexity and more dynamic elements in the choreography, well, that will take us inevitably to a more entertaining performance and more creative performance. So how this works together is a very beautiful element, and how each one of them builds the next step to the other criteria. Now, the costume, specifically for these two modalities, it has a very, let's say, free spirit that with elements you can choose in your choreography and your costume for your performance. Two things are important to keep in mind. One, the costume should be, of course, of the Latin style, because if we use a costume that is more appropriate, let's say for, I don't know, a classical dance, well, it won't be for the Latin style. So in the Latin style, there's a lot of freedom that you have to design, choose, and create your costume. The shoes, we talked about that earlier. And one thing that should be present is that the costume, the wardrobe should be comfortable for the dancer. Not only to feel comfortable on stage, but comfortable for the movements that are inside the choreography. Because if he or she is not comfortable, that is going to reflect on a lot of elements on the performance. So it should be comfortable and it should be, let's say, appropriate for that choreography, for the movement, and of course for the age of the dancers. So all of these elements come together and work together. Now, speaking of creativity and speaking of these elements, there's one thing that we do take into account as well. It's the intellectual property. Now, there's a lot of choreographers that have come before us that we use as reference, that we use as inspiration, and that is one of the wonderful things also about social media, about internet, and about those that we have the, let's say, the possibility to share and to view work of other performers, of other choreographers, of other dancers. And this can be used as fuel and to ignite our creativity, but should be used as that, not to copy work that somebody else has created and worked on. So here, when we use and we take that to our performances and we are doing plagiarism, well, that will be considered an intellectual property and will have a negative impact on your performance. So try to use some elements that you might feel inspired, but about your choreography, make it your own, make it unique, and do not come and just use some performance that somebody else did, or completely or partially. So try to be as creative as you can and original as you can on your performances. Now, speaking of our other judge, our complimentary judge will have different criteria that they will be looking for and be grading and in giving scores. Now, the stage use, that's one of the important elements in creating a choreography. How we use the space. And this will be, of course, important to keep in mind that no matter how many dancers you have on stage, we have to use the stage. That meaning, if I have a choreography, let's say 30, 40, or even 50 dancers on stage, the stage will look full. Of course it will. But are we using the stage? Are we moving through the stage? Are we using upstage, backstage, sides, all the stage in general? So this is going to be important here. The formations. Are we using different formations in our choreography? Are we always in the same point or using just one or two formations? How versatile are we with these formations? Are we using circles, lines, diagonals? Are we using pyramids? Different formations that will give different dynamics to the performance. The levels, the use of levels, high, medium, low levels in each one of our performances. And these techniques, all three levels are possible and expected to be used because it's part of the dances and it's normal, so try to use all levels. Now, in transitions, what are transitions? Transitions are a combination of these three elements. How? Transitions are how we move in the space to get to the different formations and to change to the different levels. So how are we moving? Are we walking? Are we just throwing ourselves to the floor? Are we walking? Are we running? Or are we dancing and using the technique to get to the different formations through the space? So that is going to be here one of the elements that should be taken into account and worked on. The image. In the image, we have 4 different elements that will be present. Creativity. So the whole attire, how original is it? How is it proper for the choreography, and how creative you can be with these elements? Of course, keeping in the style of the dance and the modality you are interpreting. Now, accessories. When we're speaking of accessories now, in these times that we have to use in some countries that is obliged to use a face mask, well, this element will be considered an accessory. But also in dance, we use different accessories. We use hair pieces. We use accessories maybe in our costume or props. So how are we using these accessories and how are they working for our advantage? Each category, each division, and each, let's say, style of dance normally has different aesthetics that are looked for and expected of these accessories. It is not the same accessories we'll use and expect in a samba that will be used in a salsa. Maybe the costume can be a lot similar, but the accessories normally are a lot different. So how do we use these accessories, and are they according to my performance? Makeup. Makeup is an important part of a stage performance. These dances normally are considered social dances, and when we do them in a social environment, well, of course, makeup is not a must. But when we take any dance onto the stage and turn it into a performance for public, well, then we are expected to do some different elements. And makeup is one of the elements that is going to be part of the production. So it's going to help us be more expressive and have clear view of what the dancer is trying to do. Look cleaner on stage. And there it is expected on female and male dancers alike. Of course, the makeup will be according to the style, the dance, and what you want to portray. So if the masculine figure, well, the idea is to increase those masculine traits in the face, the same as the females. How are we presented? And that makeup is going to be an important part of these performances. And in general, the visual aesthetics. So how is the visual aesthetics, and how is the costume, the attire, the accessories, the makeup, everything that composes the aesthetic part of the dancer, how is it going in accordance to the style, to the dance, to every element that is going to be part of the performance. So these are the elements that are the first elements that we're going to see of this complimentary judge, and how we can take them into account because they will be part of what gives a high or lower score. So keep these in mind. Let's see if Paula has anything she would like to add. ¿Hay algo que quisieras complementar aquí, Paula? Elementos que tengan en cuenta específicamente para estos estilos.
Sí, quiero indagar un poquito en lo que es la parte del quiz complementario, que es lo que está buscando siempre. A veces nos preocupamos mucho de la coreografía, que está bien, por supuesto, de utilizar bien el espacio, de tener buenas formaciones, de que el nivel sea correcto, que las transiciones siempre estén con el básico, etcétera, etcétera, y nos olvidamos a veces de la imagen, que es un punto importante en el quiz complementario, que se va a fijar de nuestro bailarín desde que entra al escenario hasta que sale, y que su vestuario tiene que ser acorde, que tiene que estar cómodo, que los accesorios tienen que ser acorde al vestuario, que el maquillaje tiene que ser un maquillaje de escenario, no un maquillaje social, tiene que ser un maquillaje que haga ver a nuestro bailarín o bailarina mucho más fuerte, con mucha más potencia, para que esa visual estética esté mucho más plena a la hora de ejecutar nuestra coreografía. Todo eso es importante, preocuparnos que el vestuario no se meta entre medio de las piernas. Para eso tenemos panties de baile, que si de pronto las panties no están accesibles en su lugar, en su país o su región, puede poner una panty color piel que no tenga remarcación de calzón, para que el vestuario se mantenga donde deba. Para eso hay cintas doble contacto, que son para poder preservar nuestro cuerpo y cuidarlo de nuestro vestuario, que a veces nos juega en contra, y poder estar plenos en toda la coreografía durante la ejecución de ella en el escenario. Esos puntos son importantes, a veces los pasamos por alto, pero también son súper importantes, porque cuando algo se nos hace incómodo en el escenario, la coreografía muchas veces no sale como nosotros queremos, y eso es un punto pequeño que nos arruina todo lo que trabajamos durante mucho tiempo. Entonces eso no lo tienen que dejar de lado. Y junto con eso le agregamos todo lo que es, obviamente, las formaciones de nuestra coreografía, los espacios, los niveles, etcétera, etcétera, y vamos a tener siempre una visual estética mucho más poderosa.
Muchas gracias, Paula. So here, yes, very important what she is saying. One of the elements, normally we try to worry sometimes a little bit more about one element than the other. So sometimes we emphasize on using the space, different formations, the levels, and everything in the choreography, let's say a high impact in the choreography. But sometimes we forget that part of the impact is also going to be in that image. And that image is going to affect also elements in the performance of each one of the dancers. So for example, in the makeup, remember, it's not social makeup. We're expecting stage makeup that should be able to be seen from the public from far away. That has certain elements that when we have lights will have an effect on this makeup as well. So keep that in mind for the visual that we're going to have for these dancers on stage. Another element is that the dancers should be comfortable. In that case, we have to take care of the costume, that it should be, of course, and the accessories according to the style and the performance we're going to take in place. But remember that sometimes the costume can be a little uncomfortable or move because these elements, and we move all our body very fast. Sometimes when we're working in a couple, the costume can sometimes move and be not have the dancer comfortable because he or she is looking that everything's in place and nothing, no accidents are happening with our costume. So remember, we have elements as the tape, double tape, that can help us keep everything in place, and different elements for this costume to be comfortable, so the dancer does not have to, let's say, lose concentration and be uncomfortable, sorry, the redundance, in his or her performance, and allow them to enjoy the performance and enjoy, well, of course, the public will enjoy and give a better visual aesthetics of the performance in general. So try not to emphasize just one, but have them work together for your performance, and always keep these elements in when you are creating your choreography for the dancers. Now, the complimentary judge also has these criteria. One is the performance projection. So here, we're going to keep in mind the gestuality. So here is how the body is expressing, how we're telling our story through nonverbal language. Our body speaks through the eyes, through the arms, through the legs, through the posture as well. And well, of course, if we smile or not, but when we are obliged to use a face mask, well, we can't depend on facial expression completely, just the eyes. Now, this is, I know, a difficult element that a lot of people are like, no, but how are they going to see me? Well, everybody is in fair conditions because we all have the same, let's say, rules apply for all the dancers, not just one or two. But also, I think it's a positive influence that it has on dance, and we're going to see it long term, because that makes the dancers have to speak with the other elements of their body and not just depend on a smile or on a face they can create. So this, it makes it more difficult, but it will have a very, very positive impact on what we can say with all our body. The authenticity of the character. The authenticity of the character comes together a lot of elements. The costume, the technical elements we're including, what we're trying to say and portray. So if we are in a bachata choreography, well, the character should be according to bachata. What style of bachata? Or if we're dancing the steps of another technique, well, then that we're losing our character as a dancer. So all the elements that we are taking into place should be according to the dance we're performing. And of course, the expression should also be according to the style that we accompany to this performance. The force of movement, we are going to be referring to especially the, let's say, the clarity and the preciseness of the movement. So if it's strong, it should be strong. If it's precise, if it's sharp, if it's soft, how is the movement supposed to be interpreted, and how clear is it from the beginning to the end of the movement? So this will be the clarity of the movement and the projection of, let's say, the arms, the legs, all of this clarity in the movement of the body. And interpretation. Here we take into place all these elements because, of course, the body language comes in with all these elements. How the movements, if they're clear, how we use our body, and that is going to allow to interpret what it is on stage in the performance, okay? So all of these come and work together and form this element that is interpretation. Does the dancer portray, and do we understand what it is they are interpreting and how they communicate this? And we have these last criteria that are the public response. This is a way that we bring everybody as an invited judge on the judging panel. Now, how can you do that? Of course, one of the main beautiful things as a dancer that we have is our public. How we communicate with that public and the energy that they give us and that we give them. And how do we feel the energy of the public? Through applauses, through the being there with them, through the social medias now, that is something that is very, let's say, new, but very important now for the dancers. So the support on social media, the support when we are live through Zoom, how are we there? And especially when we're there present, well, all the warmth, the applauses, and all the support we can give them in every way. So that is going to be a part where parents, teachers, friends, fans can come in and support the dancers and help them with actually their performance in many ways, in the energy they give, and also here with some scores. So these are the elements that it also add to this complimentary judge. Let's see what Paula has to share with us to complement this information. So, Paula, cuéntanos elementos que tal vez quisieras complementar aquí que sean, digamos, como pertinentes a estas modalidades en específico.
Bueno, como hablamos anteriormente, hablamos del vestuario, de lo importante que es nuestro vestuario en nuestra modalidad y también de la importancia que tiene la ejecución de los básicos de la modalidad que estamos ejecutando, como por ejemplo bachata y danzas latinas. Llegamos a la parte de la proyección, de la proyección escénica, de la ejecución de nuestra coreografía, que es súper importante. ¿Por qué? Porque ya tenemos listo el vestuario, tenemos nuestro fundamento, pero ahora nos toca darle fuerza, darle cuerpo a nuestra coreografía, y para eso necesitamos justamente tener la interpretación de la coreografía que estamos ejecutando, ya sea bachata, si es muy sensual, ser sensual, no llevarlo a la sexualidad, no ser explícitos en el movimiento, sino que sensuales según lo que es el estilo que estamos trabajando, o muy dominicana, y que nuestras caderas estén en constante movimiento para que se pueda entender lo que estamos haciendo. Si es en danzas latinas, Latino Open, lo mismo. Si es un merengue, que el merengue tenga la base muy marcada en las caderas, asimismo en todos nuestros bailes que son open. Bueno, ¿a qué quiero llegar con esto? A que debemos darle cuerpo a la coreografía, no solamente preocuparnos que el peinado y el maquillaje esté lindo, no preocuparnos solamente de que los básicos estén bien ejecutados, sino que también de lo que tiene que ver con la autenticidad del personaje. Si mi canción a elección de mi coreografía es un poco triste, debo estar plasmando esa historia. Ser feliz cuando me lo indica la canción, ser triste cuando me indica la canción según la coreografía, y explotar en la parte más rápida, más explosiva de la canción, que es donde yo entro a proyectar todo lo que es la fuerza del baile, con todo lo que es la fusión de los open shine, etcétera. O si es en pareja, la rapidez, el trabajo de pies, la musicalización, etcétera, etcétera. Porque con todo eso vamos a lograr tener una respuesta pública mucho más amplia, mucho más explosiva, mucho más alentadora a la hora de estar en el escenario haciendo nuestra coreografía. Cuando nosotros mantenemos al público entretenido y encima lo tenemos súper emocionado porque la interpretación es buena, es amplia y la fuerza de los movimientos están correctamente realizados, claramente el público, aunque no sea el público de mi escuela, aunque no sea mi familia, el público va a responder, y eso es lo que estamos buscando justamente en este ítem, que el público explote con la coreografía de nuestro bailarín o de ti como bailarín, explote al punto de si querer pararse y aplaudirte enormemente, sea justamente porque todo esto en conjunto van a lograr que el público pueda responder así.
Perfecto, muchas gracias, Paula. So yes, an important thing also to keep in mind with these is that the dress and the costume are an important element, but also how we project those basic steps and everything that comes together. That's the way we shape our choreography, and this is going to affect our interpretation. This interpretation is, of course, according to the style that we choose to dance. For example, if it's a sensual bachata, so how are we interpreting that sensuality without taking it to the extreme of sexuality and being too explicit? If it's Dominican bachata, so how are we moving and exaggerating the hip movements? That is one of the elements here. And what is the expression expected in this Dominican bachata? If it's merengue, also keep the hips moving. Merengue normally is a very happy dance. So what are we telling? Sometimes it can be sad, and that's going to affect also the song choice we have. So depending on the song choice, is also going to be the character and the, let's say, the story of the choreography. So that character must express what the music is also, and it's a complement there. So part of that is going to be the music. If it's a sad music, so how are we portraying that sadness in our choreography? If it's happy, if it's, I don't know, dramatic, how are we using those elements in our character, in our performance? Not only for it to look nice. Well, of course we want it to look nice, but have these other elements that will generate more dynamics and more explosive elements in our choreography that will have a better response of the public. And when we talk about public, of course, is what I said, our family, our friends, but everybody that's there. But especially also to be able to support and connect with those people that don't even know us, but we bring to them to enjoy our performance. Because when we're in this space of dance, we're all working together and we're all dancers and we're all supporting and we all can enjoy this piece. But that to enjoy the performance well and to get that public support, the dynamics of the choreography, the overall put together and the explosive moments that we can generate and the expression of this choreography and the character will have a better impact and a more clear connection with all of the public's response. So these are elements that are going to give, let's say, a plus to all the performances, and especially to these Latin dances that have a very, let's say, high energy in the performances as part of the basic technique. So these elements, let's say, are the elements that modality and complementary judge are going to be looking for, but are not the only judges. Remember, I talked about the third judge, that is the penalty or deductions judge. So this judge is going to be, let's say, looking and taking care of some criteria. Most of the criteria are general for all the dancers because they are looking for everybody to have a fair presentation and a fair competition. But some of them are more specific to each dance technique that is going to be on stage. Now, let's see, and we're going to see each one because the idea is for these deductions not to be made. So when we know the deductions and we know the possibilities we have, we also know how to avoid them. And that is the important part here. The other criteria, the idea is to use them and to have them present. And here, the idea is to be able to avoid these deductions. Now, when we're talking about this first deductions, wrong modality, this is strongly, of course, depending on the modality we are registered in. So here we're talking about, of course, bachata and Latin dances. So these Latin Open and bachata should have present what characteristics? The ones that Paula has been telling us this whole time. What are the basic steps? What are the basic elements in this specific modality? Sometimes in Latin dances, we use some elements of other dances. For example, we spoke about that in our earlier workshop in Spanish, that one of the elements that is strongly used, especially for soloist dancers in these modalities, is some transitional and some elements of, for example, jazz dance. Now, we use that as transitional elements, as elements that support these Latin dances, but the basic technical and difficulty elements and the basic steps that are there should be the Latin dances and each one of these techniques. We use other elements as transitions, and that is okay. But when we use too much of these elements, then we try and sometimes we go into other modalities and, let's say, cross the line. So we have to keep in mind that the basic elements and the, let's say, the overall elements that are present are from the Latin techniques. And the other elements are just there supporting some of the transitions and some of the elements in the performance, since these are normally partner dancers, not soloist dances. So when we dance solo, well, we have shines and we have some elements, but we also take, let's say, borrowed from other techniques. Wrong division. Now here, the wrong division would be when the division is about the ages. So the age range of the dancers in the choreography should be according to the divisions we have. This we spoke more in detail in our first workshop. If you couldn't see it and you want to go back, it's on our YouTube channel, All Dance International Official. You can go back and check, or go online in our rule book that is our organic code. You can go online and see what divisions we have and which one works for your group or for your soloist, because we have divisions for every age range and every group. We have also the wrong level. We talked about the level, the expectations, but also remember this is always created thinking about the fair competition for every dancer. So here, the idea, if you're a student dancer, you should not be dancing in a new all dancers level, because it will not be fair for those new all dancers. The same, if you're a pre-professional, professional dancer, you will not be dancing with student dancers. You will be competing against your own level of dancers. And this is to keep the competition fair for everybody. And as I was saying, one of the beautiful elements of winning is actually winning your awards and doing it honestly. So this is why this is so important for us. Another criteria, late arrival on stage. When we register, we are sent, let's say, a preliminary program where we can see diverse elements as a approximate time of performance or on stage. This, remember, keep in mind, is approximate, but there we can see if we have enough time to change. We can see what time approximately we will be dancing, and we always tell everybody and recommend everybody to get there 2 hours in advance. That way we can warm up, we can do our makeup, we can be ready, and we can be looking at the program and see how it is evolving and how it is going, if we're ahead of time, if we're not ahead of time. So we're always ready to be on stage when we are supposed to be on stage. If we're called backstage, we are where we're supposed to be. So this is an important element, and it's part of the discipline as a dancer. False routine start. Now, what is a false routine start? When we're on stage and we're ready to dance, well, if the music is played and we move, well, we started our performance. Now, what happens if we start and stop and have to start again? Well, that is a false routine start. If by any chance the music is not put correctly by me, or if we're live by our parents or our dance teacher, well, if it's not correct, we should not move. We stay still. And this is the part where the dancer has to work together with all the team. So if it is not my music, if it's not clear, do not move. If they move, the choreography already is considered to start, okay? Forbidden elements. The forbidden elements will be elements that are considered to be hazardous or put in danger the physical integrity of the dancers or of the stage for the next dancers or performances after mine. This will be the use of liquids, of oils, of dust elements, or let's say fire. Any element that can put in danger the stage or the dancers performing on the stage will be considered forbidden elements. Keep in mind that one of the forbidden elements are the use of feathers. In these dances, a lot of feathers sometimes are used and as part of the costume. When we're using them, for example, in samba, that they're part of the headpieces a lot of times, well, make sure they're well sewn, that they do not fall off and do not cause an accident, because also the high heels can be very slippery and become hazardous if there's something on the floor, and that may cause an accident. And if we're using small feathers, I recommend you change them for some other element that can give the same visual impact if that's what you want, or sew them one by one that they do not fall off to avoid having a deduction for forbidden elements. Excessive use of acrobatic or gymnastic elements. Remember, in bachata and Latin dances, we can use maximum 4 acrobatic or gymnastic elements if you wish to include them. It is not obliged to use them. You can or don't, but if you are, maximum 4. Makeup, body paint, inappropriate, obscene, or offensive clothing. What are we talking about here? Body painting, for example, is a beautiful expression of art, but normally is 2 things are taken into account here. Body paint normally is oil-based paint for the body, does not dry, so it can make the stage dirty or even slippery for other dancers. And normally body paint is executed without clothes on. This is a beautiful expression of art, but it is not, let's say, appropriate for the stage in competition that, remember, we are a family audience-based competition. Obscene, offensive clothing or inappropriate clothing, well, would be appropriate clothing for the age, for the dance, especially for the dance, of course. We cannot dance a Latin dance with a ballet tutu. If you're doing a fusion of both, well, that would be welcome on stage, but not here. It's not a Latin dance, so we have to look in what modality it should be danced. Here, Latin dances with Latin costume, with Latin shoes. Same for bachata, the specific shoes are heels. Of course, depending on your age is the size of the heel, because when the kids are just developing the ankle strength and their physical, well, it's not going to be a very high heel, it's a low heel. The dancer is more advanced, well, it's going to be higher heel. Some of these techniques use a wider heel, some of them use a more pinpoint heel. So those are the elements, and depending on the age, the style, well, it should be the correct, appropriate costume and accessories. Poorly executed elements. Now, if we're going to include technical elements or gymnastic elements, we should take care that they are correctly executed. The technique, the lines, if the knees are straight, if they're bent, how should it be executed? It should be clear. The lines of the arms, when we're turning, our head use, where is our spot? How are we executing these elements? The line of the foot, when we're projecting our leg in the air, how are we projecting that foot? Also, how are we stepping? Our feet parallel, open, or are they looking inside? So what is the line we should be looking for? Never looking in, and our legs and our feet should never be, let's say, forgotten about. They are not loose. They always have a clear position for it to be clean, the execution. Tripping or falling. Now, if we trip, we have a stumbling, an instability, it'll have a deduction of 0.5. If we save the element, almost, but we could save it and finish. Now, if we fall, if we can't avoid but falling, we can't save the element, so that execution would be considered a fall, and it would have 1 point of deduction. Throwing items to the public. Whatever element we have with us or falls off, or whatever we have maybe in our hands, if we wish to take it off stage, it should be done by the laterals, not front of the stage, not throwing it off the stage, but taking it off through the laterals where we won't injure somebody and where it's intended to. Or on stage, we can take it off and throw it, but on stage, not off stage, okay? Inappropriate language or music. Here, it is very important that we keep in mind that we are, of course, a public family public, but also an inclusive competition where we respect all genders, all beliefs, all races, and we respect everybody equally. So the music should not contain any, let's say, bad words or any offensive words that can insult or be offensive for anybody. Also, the music should not be sexually oriented and should not have a sexual content. It should be, as I was saying, repeat, family, public oriented music. And inappropriate movements. Same here, it should apply. They should be movements in a sensual manner, if so, but not sexually explicit movements that insinuate or that are accompanied with sometimes even facial expressions. So the movements should be kept technical movements and not sexualize these movements. So these are the first criteria. We still have some to see. These are the first criteria, and here's where we're going to find that they're more specific to the category, to the modality we're dancing. So let's see what Paula has to add and to complement for this information. Paula, con respecto a esto, ¿hay algo que quieras complementar y que quieras agregar que les pueda dar algunos elementos?
Creo que está todo súper claro con respecto a las deducciones. Creo que manejando bien el código no deberíamos pasar por esto. Son, como dijo Sandra en algún minuto, una décima nos puede dejar fuera del podio o nos puede dejar en un segundo, tercero fuera del podio o abajo. Entonces, incluso al último, si el código está mal ejecutado, ya sea por modalidad incorrecta, por vocabulario obsceno, por una música que tenga palabras que no estén adecuadas o movimientos que no estén adecuados y estén fuera del reglamento. Entonces, si leemos bien el reglamento y nos afirmamos ahí, esto, no debería tener preponderancia en nuestra coreografía. Esto debería pasar por alto, ya que de cierta forma si lo estudiamos bien, nada de esto va a hacer que un juez de deducción nos quite ese punto tan importante que nos permite estar en un primer lugar o dentro de los 3 primeros lugares, ya sean nacionales, internacionales o mundiales. Eso.
Perfecto, gracias, Paula. So yes, these are the elements that we spoke about according to the modality, but also remember that every point counts. Even a small point, 0.5 can affect the results, because especially when we're in a hard competition, national, international, or continental, well, every point can count, and that can be the difference from a first place to a second place, or not even in the top 3. So the more we read, the more knowledge we have of the rules, it'll give us a better advantage in having a better score. Well, if you're here listening, if you're here with us, or you're watching us on YouTube, well, you are here because you care, because this is going to be information that is going to be very useful, and that way you can avoid any one of these deductions. Well, most of them, especially some, will happen by accident on stage, but as much as we can avoid, well, that will give us a big advantage in our results and for each dancer, because, well, a lot of hard work goes behind each one of these performances. So we don't want any mistake that we can avoid beforehand to affect the results of these dancers. The other elements to take into account for deductions that can possibly have deduction, that they won't, because I know you're going to take them into account, are accidents or falls of clothing or elements, accessories. If we have a hat, if we have, I don't know, any element in our hand, props, well, rehearse with that. Rehearse with the costume. See if anything falls off. See if everything is correctly in place. If something has to be sewn, sew it very well. If the hairpiece, a lot of pins, bobby pins, whatever you need to put everything into place and to keep it, okay? So it doesn't fall off or have accidents of any of these elements. Damaged clothing or untidy clothing. Now, our personal presentation is an important part of the discipline of dancers and the visual aesthetics. So our socks, our stockings, our tights, our legs should be, well, not with any holes. Our hair should be tidy, whatever style you choose to put your hair, but it should be clear how your hair is supposed to be. My underwear, all my, let's say, undergarment should not be visual, should be correctly or hidden or not be present, and so it looks tidy. How are our heels tied, the bands, the strips, everything should be correctly put in its place, and especially when we're in a group, everything should be according to that performance and have the same language or be exactly the same. If it's different, then what is the language we're working on? It should be tidy, everybody in the same manner. Inappropriate choreography to division. Keep your choreography age appropriate. That is what it's saying. That simple. Altisonance at start, middle, or end of the routine. Now, the routine when we're dancing, well, should not have these two elements. One, not say the name of the group, the studio, anything, it be said by the dancers or it be said by the lyrics in the song. And the other element is that sometimes we try to arouse the public by screaming, by bringing their energy up before or after the performance, and that could have, let's say, an impact on the response of the public or of the judges. So the idea is to generate this impact and generate that emotion, but through the dance, through the steps, through my expression, and not through just some, let's say, verbal expression at the beginning or end. So If you want to have everybody's energy up, well, that's what dance is for. Left elements on stage. This meaning whatever we bring on stage with us should leave the stage with us. If it's part of our costume and it falls off, well, we pick it up and take it. If it's a prop we used and maybe put it down because the next part of the choreography we didn't use the prop, well, that's no problem. But when we leave the stage, we should pick up everything we brought on stage with us and take it with us. No, that's it. Easy as that. Use of scenery. Here, what is going to be considered scenery and what can we and can't use? Now, scenery will be considered those elements that are there just to be part of the decor, to give, let's say, an ambient, different elements that can be put on stage. Now, that is an element that we will be considering scenery and should not be present. When can I take something on stage with me? That can also be considered decor sometimes. Elements that are part of my choreography. Let's say I use a chair and the chair is part of my choreography. I'm using it at least 30% of my performance should include this element because it's part of my performance. I use the chair, I sit on it, I move it, I stand, I don't know, whatever element, how you use that, but it should be part of the choreography. If I just take it on stage, start sitting down, stand up, dance, it did not have any place or context in my choreography and will be considered scenery. So no element should just be there as a decorative element trying to generate an impact, or let's say put it in, take me to a certain timeline, take me to a certain place. All those elements should be part of what I take to the choreography, the costume, the makeup, the music, how I generate that impact in my character, in my performance, what is the context I'm bringing. That should be by the elements in the choreography, not by external elements just by putting them on stage. If we do use elements as props that also can be considered scenery, but we're using them, well, one important thing is that it should be taken on and off stage by the dancer or the dancers in the performance. They should not have help by anybody outside of the performance to bring on or off stage. Okay. Also, fans, public obstruction of judgment. Now, we have to educate our public and our for our performances. All these elements are going to be part of the culture of dance. Now, before and after the choreographies, this everybody can scream, get up, be as loud as they want. Now, it should be in a respectful manner, and that respectful manner during the choreography has to be a little different because the dancer needs to be able to hear the music and not lose concentration, especially when one of the elements that's going to be evaluated is the musical interpretation. And the judges as well need to be able to hear the music to be able to evaluate how the dancer is using the music. So the public should be responding in a respectful manner. If the dancer has elements in the middle of the choreography that they've worked hard on, that it surprises the public and they want to support the dancer, they may do so in a respectful manner. Applaud and be there to support them, but also be respectful and let everybody enjoy the performance, hear the music, and don't make the dancer, lose concentration. Getting off, jumping off, or dropping off stage. Now, when we get off and on stage, it should be done by the routes and the places that are indicated by the organization. So when we get on and off, if there's stairs that are marked for that, if it's through the curtains of the theater, wherever it is, but where it is marked that is supposed to go. On and off. We don't jump off stage, not in the front, not to the back, not to the sides. We go off in a very respectful manner through the safe marked places that we do in our routine. Routine time. The routine time, we can find the routine or choreographic time established for each one of our subdivisions. That means depending on how many dancers are on stage, we're going to have a maximum time that we can do in our performance. Now, for every 5 seconds we go over that time, we will have a deduction of 3 points. That can affect very in a big manner each performance and the results of the performance and the dancer. So let's avoid this. So for example, we have a soloist, duet, or trio. That means maximum my choreography can last 2 minutes. Now, my choreography, let's say it lasts 2:02 or 2:03. No problem there, no deduction. But when it lasts 2:05, 2:06, 2:07, we have 3 points. If it lasts 2:10, 2:11, we have 6 points. And that is going to have a very negative impact. Now, what I do not recommend is for your choreography to go too much to the borderline. So if it lasts 2:04, we're very in the borderline, and that means that by any movement the dancer can go overtime. How? Because the time is counted from the beginning at the first movement or sound, and we end that choreographic time by the last movement or sound. So maybe the dancer, 1 second after he stopped the choreography, he still moved, and that's the time that's going to be counted. So if it's 2:04, it's very easily placed on 2:05 and have a deduction. So please try to keep it under 2:04 so this doesn't happen. It can be 1:50, 1:55, 1:57, no problem. It can be 1:30, but you cannot go over the 2 minutes, okay? Intellectual property, we spoke about that earlier for the modality judge. It will just be reflected here, but in charge of the modality judge. Other two criteria to keep in mind are regulation infringements. Any other regulation infringement that can be unfair for the dancers or be disrespectful for any of the dancers or the competition can also have a negative impact. So read the rules and just be respectful of all the dancers during the whole competition. Increase in unreported dancers. So if you report and in your registration, this dance has, let's say, 7 dancers, well, 7 dancers should be on stage. If there are 8 dancers, well, then you'll have 5-point deduction. If there are 9 dancers, 10 points. So as you can see, this is a very negative impact on the results. Very easily avoided. If there are 7 dancers going to be on stage, we'll report the 7 dancers, register as 7 dancers. Let's say in the beginning, 5 dancers were going to go on stage, and let's say after that, a dancer is going to go also on stage. Report it, obviously, during the times established for these changes so it can be fixed. Remember to check the program that the dancers are reported correctly for what you registered. If it says 7 on the sheet, it should be 7 that you are presenting. If there should be more, well, then make the observation so it can be corrected. Now, if less dancers dance because I don't know what got sick, elements, situations like that, depending on the division the subdivision, it can affect or not. If it's a large group and it's supposed to be, let's say 15 dancers were going to dance and only 14 go on stage, we're still a large group, no problem. But let's say there was supposed to be 4 dancers, so it was a group, a small group, but 1 got sick or 2 injured, I don't know, whatever elements, or they don't want to dance at last minute, I don't know. So instead of dancing 4, they're only dancing 3. This means it's not a small group anymore. This means it's a trio. So that means it should be competing with the trios and not with the groups. Now there is a big change. And there should be at least notified with correct time and, of course, with the correct reasons and why, supported by, so we can do the adjustments necessary for these dancers to compete against the correct subdivision. So all of these elements are the ones that we're going to have to take in account, and if you're here, we'll obviously avoid them very easily and just read the rules, comply to them, and that you will see has a very positive impact in the results of your performances, because this is one of the competitive advantages. Because sadly, some people don't even read the rules, right? And of course, part of being a dancer is the technique, it's the execution, but also the discipline and the respect that goes behind that. And that is what makes it a fair competition and what makes it a growth experience for dance and for the dancers involved. So these are the elements to take in account. If you have any questions, go ahead. That's why we have our chat. So that's why we're here. If not, if some come up later and you wish to, or you're on YouTube, leave in the comments. We'll be happy to guide you. And these are the basic elements we need for our Bachata and Latin Open modalities. I want to thank you all for being present. Thank you, All Dance, for these spaces and these opportunities to keep growing, to keep learning, and to give us all the details and the opportunity to clarify some doubts if we have them. Remember, we're on YouTube on the All Dance International official channel. And well, that's the idea, for us to keep in touch, to be in constant communication and learning from each other. I would like to thank Paula for sharing all this knowledge with us, for being here, for supporting us, and well, of course, for sharing this information. So before that, I'm going to answer a question. Voy a responder una preguntita antes, Paula, para que nos podamos despedir en español. O sea que listo, José, y le podemos responder en español. ¿Hay alguna categoría en la que se permiten más de 4 trucos o acrobacias? Listo. Te voy a responder en español y en inglés para que también sirva a los que están viendo, que son de habla inglesa. Y cada modalidad tiene una cantidad máxima, incluso algunas mínimas de acrobacias o trucos permitidos. Inclusive tenemos una modalidad que todavía no ha sido la charla, de Acro Dance, donde antes hay un mínimo de 5 acrobacias y la predominancia ahí es cómo mezclamos la acrobacia con la danza. Tenemos el All Dance Show y el All Dance Open, donde no hay un límite de acrobacias, pero digamos que debe ser al menos un 60% de danza. En otras modalidades se permiten en algunas, por ejemplo, en salsa, cabaret, que vamos a tener mañana la salsa, debe tener mínimo 5 acrobacias, porque es uno de los elementos que compone la salsa cabaret, y así sucesivamente. Entonces, dependiendo del estilo de danza y la cantidad de acrobacias que tengas, vas a poderlo ubicar en una modalidad u otra. ¿Sí? So here, they're asking, in what categories more than 4 acrobatic elements can they perform? Well, when this happens, we have different modalities and each one has different characteristics. In this acrobatic or gymnastic elements, speaking of this, for example, we have a specific modality that's Acro Dance, where gymnastic elements and acrobatics are an important part of this modality. So there will be minimum 5 and should have a large impact and be throughout the whole choreography. We have in salsa cabaret, that is a style that's a show for salsa, that we have minimum 5 acrobatics elements as well. We have All Dance Open and All Dance Show, where we don't have a minimum or a maximum of acrobatic elements, but there is a minimum of 60% dance in these categories, well, these modalities, because of course it's a dance competition and we want to see dance. But depending on the choreography, the elements you include, we have the specific modality where you would have better results. So according to that, you can guide yourself. The acro modality workshop hasn't occurred yet. You can keep in touch. We already did the open, but the open show is still available. It's going to be. If not, go back and see our open and all the elements. If after that any doubts arise, well, you can comment and we'll be happy to respond and help you out and clarify any other elements that could help you out in your performance. So if that's it, now I would like to say goodbye and also thank Paula for all the love, support, and always the commitment to the dancers, to the dance industry, and of course the growth of all of us as a dance community. So muchas gracias, Paula, por estar con nosotros, por compartir todo este conocimiento con tanto amor, con tanta entrega y dar esta oportunidad a todos dentro de la familia All Dance y de la comunidad de la danza, enriquecernos y compartir esta información contigo.
Muchísimas gracias, Sandra. Obviamente, gracias a la gente de All Dance por confiar en mi trabajo. Gracias, Sandra, por esto, porque de verdad que a los directores, a los maestros, a los bailarines, alumnos, todo, esto es un un gran aporte para seguir creciendo, para poder seguir preparándose para lo que se viene, para cada campeonato, ya sea nacional, para una coreografía, para una muestra en su escuela, para todo esto es más, es sumar más a la danza, es sumar más a lo que ya sabemos y aclarar dudas de lo que no tenemos claro. Así que de todas maneras seguir invitándolos a seguir leyendo el código, seguir alimentándose las pautas que tiene nuestro reglamento para que así todas nuestras puestas en escena estén correctamente ejecutadas y cada una en la modalidad que corresponde.
Claro que sí, muchas gracias, Paula. Well, she thanks everybody for being here, for obviously supporting dance, and for sharing this information that is going to be very useful information for the composition of your choreographies and that creative process. Remember, we still have more workshops to come. She advises everybody to keep on reading the rules, the organic code, watching the other workshops so we can complement all this information, and every performance we have on stage has a better chance of being in the correct mentality, and we use all these elements to our advantage and have better results on stage. Here are our dates for our workshops. The schedule, the timeline is in Panamanian time. We're still up to the 25th of April with all this information and all the support we can give you for your performances to have a very positive impact in your studio, in your dancers, and in the dance community, and of course in All Dance International. So welcome. Thank you for sharing with us, and we hope to see you very, very soon here live and all our competitions. And always welcome to the All Dance family, and thank you for being part of the creative workshops. See you very soon. Remember, tomorrow we're with salsa, so if you are a Latin dancer and also dance salsa, I'll wait for you tomorrow. So bye-bye. See you soon.
Bye.